Hey, Algebra students, in this lesson, we are going to be doing two different things. First of all, we're going to be simplifying rational expressions using the distributive property. That means we're going to be taking a bunch of fractions and multiplying them by other fractions, okay? Multiplying fractions is easy. You multiply across the top, multiply across the bottom. The only difference here is we're also going to be using the distributive property. We're going to multiply this fraction times this one, and then we're going to do the second one as well, because you know the distributive property, we have to multiply the first one, okay? And then we have to multiply that same term times the second one. That's how the distributive property works. So that's the first thing. I'm just going to tell you, these problems may be a little tedious. They may take a little bit of work. We have to keep track of exponents. We have to make sure we simplify all the way. But they're easy problems. They're easy problems because you know how to multiply fractions. You know how to use the distributive property. We're just going to be putting those together. Then we're going to be working some problems where powers are raised to powers. Again, easy problems. Maybe a little tedious again. We have to combine some things. You have to make sure you pay attention. But they're easy problems because you know how to do them. All right, let's get started with letter A. In letter A, we're going to multiply r squared times r squared to do the numerators, and then q times q cubed. Well, r squared times r squared, I just add the exponent. It's going to be r to the fourth on the top. Okay. On the bottom, I'm going to have q times q cubed, which gives me q to the fourth on the bottom. And that first fraction is done. There's nothing that I can do to combine these any further. I can't do the division because they're different variables, so different bases. It's just going to be r to the fourth over q to the fourth. Now, I like this problem because the second one shows you the other thing that you have to watch for. So I'm going to multiply straight across the top. It's going to be 7r squared q to the third. There's nothing else that I can combine there. I do have to add the exponents if anything has like bases, but there are no like bases. So I'm just going to keep my 7, keep my r squared, keep my q cubed. This is going to be divided by what's on the bottom is going to be qw. Now, you're going to be tempted at this point to say, hey, I'm done. I've got my two terms. The problem is what you need to do is look for anything that's the same variable in the numerator and the denominator. So here I have a q in the numerator of this fraction and a q in the denominator. This q in the denominator cancels one of my q's in the numerator. So instead of q to the third, I have a q squared. So it was q cubed over q. The q in the bottom canceled out one of the q's on the top. And this is my final answer. Let me just make sure I did that correctly. There it is. And this is in the actual like fraction bar form. It's a little better than my form over here. Let's just keep going. Letter B, a similar problem. All right, so I'm going to multiply on the top. I'm going to try to keep things in alphabetical order the best I can. That's going to require for me to switch things around a little bit, though. So it's going to be A T U Y on top. I'm multiplying the T times UAY, and then putting them in alphabetical order. I just get A T U Y. There's nothing I can do to simplify that. And then divided by TQZ. Q goes first in alphabetical order, so it's QTZ if I put those in alphabetical order. I'm going to keep the sign in between. So before I just put the plus sign without saying anything or without thinking about it, here I'm just going to make a big deal. I'm going to keep the minus sign because there's a minus sign in between. And this is going to become, let's see, when I multiply this top by t, it becomes 2t to the fourth y squared. Okay, because I have t to the third and I'm multiplying by an extra t. And then divided by, now I notice there's no denominator here, but technically it has an implied denominator of 1. It's like 2t cubed y squared over 1. I have to multiply that denominator by z, so it's going to be over z. Now, looking back, do I have anything in the numerator and denominator of either of these fractions? Well, here I have a t and a t in the numerator and denominator. Those t's are going to cancel each other out. This is my final answer. I have nothing the same in the numerators and denominators. Let's just make sure I did this right. UAY, they didn't put them in alphabetical order. They should have put them in alphabetical order. Over ZQ minus 2t to the fourth y squared over z. There we go. Moving on to letter C. See how easy these ones are? You know how to do all of these steps. The only hard part is keeping track of everything. All right, now we're going to add another level of complexity to this one, though. because we're going to add in some negative exponents. Remember, your final answer is not allowed to have any negative exponents. You have to make them positive exponents. But let's go ahead and do this one. So if I add the exponents, j to the negative 2 times j to the negative 3, negative 2 plus negative 3 is negative 5. This is going to be j to the negative 5. That's going to be over. Now I have to do the denominators. M times m to the negative second. That's like m to the first times m to the negative second. 1 plus negative 2 is m to the negative 1 on the bottom there. Okay? Now we have to deal with those negative exponents yet, but we'll do that later. Plus, I'm keeping the sign from the middle, 9 times m to the third. That's not going to change. Times j to the negative second. I have to multiply this by j to the negative second in the numerator, and then divided by k times m. Now, I didn't worry about alphabetical order here. I think the j is going to go first, but that's going to be fine because I'm going to be moving some things around. Let's see. So I have a j to the negative fifth in the numerator here. That to the negative fifth tells me it's on the wrong side of the fraction bar. So I'm going to get rid of j to the negative fifth on this side of the fraction bar. I'm going to move it to the other side of the fraction bar. And when I do that, I have to change the exponent to positive. M to the negative 1 on the denominator side of the fraction bar. I have to take that and move it to the other side of the fraction bar. Then I'm going to make the exponent positive, but m to the first is the same thing as just m. So it's going to be m over j to the fifth plus 9 m cubed. So far, so good. This j to the negative second has to go to the other side of the fraction bar. I'm going to put this in alphabetical order now. I'm going to put j in front of km in the denominator. It was j to the negative 2, so now it's going to be j squared. And let's see. In this one, I have an m to the third on the top and an m on the bottom. That m is going to cancel out one of my m's in the numerator to make it m squared. Now, I have nothing else that's the same in the numerator and denominator. So this is going to be my final answer. Let me just make sure I got this right. M over j to the fifth plus 9m squared over j squared k. I would prefer if that was in alphabetical order, but whatever. All right, letter D. For letter D, we're going to be doing the exact same thing. We're just going to be multiplying n to the negative 2 across the top, z across the bottom. I notice in my second term, I have an implied 1 underneath the 4n to the fifth b to the negative third. Let's go ahead and do this one. So we're going to end up with v to the negative 2. I'm sorry, we'll put n at the, let's see, let's do it alphabetical order right away. B times c times n to the negative 2. Okay, we need to bring that over. And then times v to the negative 2, because that's already in the problem. Okay, and that's going to be divided by my denominators here. This is going to be n v to the negative 1. And then let's see, z goes on the bottom as well there. Okay, bring it along the minus sign from in between. And this is going to be 4. Okay, so n to the fifth times n to the negative second. I'm multiplying these. I'm going to add negative 2 to 5. This is going to become n to the third because I add the exponents. And then I'm going to keep my b to the negative third here for now. Okay. That's going to be divided by divided by 1. Okay, so I'm just going to multiply z by the 1 on the bottom. Now, I'm going to go back, and I'm going to move anything with a negative exponent to the other side of the fraction bar. This n to the negative second becomes n to the second in the denominator. But wait, I already have an n in the denominator. I have n times n to the second. N times n times n, right? So it's going to actually be n to the third, and I'm going to get rid of this other n. N to the third in the denominator. I have to move this v to the negative second to the denominator. Okay, so I'm going to do that. Now in the denominator, v to the negative second, v to the negative first times v to the second. I had to change the sign because I moved it to the denominator. I'm going to add these exponents. Negative 1 plus 2 is just 1. So this becomes v to the 1. or just v, right? And then that's it. All my negative exponents are taken care of, and I don't have anything the same in the numerator and denominator. Over here, I need to take this b and move it to the denominator. I'm going to do so in alphabetical order. That becomes b to the third z in the denominator. Then I have nothing else the same in the numerator and denominator, so that should be my answer to this question. All right, let me just look. CB or BC if you do it alphabetical order. N cubed VZ minus in the middle 4n cubed over b cubed z. We got exactly the same answer, although they did it in a really weird order. Now, what do we do if there's three terms that we need to multiply? We will multiply by the first, multiply by the second, multiply by the third. In letter E, we would end up with something looking like this. Again, we're going to do all the same things where we cancel anything that's on the top and the bottom, but we just have to keep track. Notice also that the signs, so it's a plus sign first and a minus sign second. We're not going to go through E. We're not really going to go through F either. I'm just going to show you that this works out the exact same way. Notice that you have to make all of your exponents positive. When you do that, in this last fraction and in the middle fraction, you end up bringing everything to the top of the fraction bar. And if you have nothing under the fraction bar, you don't have to write the fraction bar over 1. You just leave it like this, okay? And then every once in a while, you're going to run into a real world problem. You have to multiply these together. You're going to run into some problems where you're calculating area or volume. When you do that, you just multiply together the same way as we did up here, and you'll get an answer in the same form as we got up here. Again, make sure you cancel anything that's the same on the top and the bottom, and any negative exponents need to be dealt with by bringing that term over.